Welcome to FCPS All-Stars. We have with us today Lisa Martell, English language learner teacher at Frederick High School. Welcome, Lisa.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. At the age of 19, most young women find themselves either in college, in school, or in the workforce. But you decided to take a different path. What was your life choice?
Well, I went to college for a year and a half, and then I went in the Army because I had no money. I went to FCC first and then ran out of money, so I decided to join the Army. And was in for 4 years active.
Okay.
Did some interesting things while I was in. Satellite communications was my job. And while I was in the Army, we traveled to Korea. I was stationed in Okinawa. We traveled to Korea to work, and it was pretty interesting. My final year active, they decided I should be an instructor for satellite communications. So that was my first taste of the teaching.
How old were you when you were doing all of this?
I was 21, 22.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
How did you wind up being a teacher for FCPS?
Well, my final year in the Army, in the active Army, they decided I had made sergeant pretty quickly, and when that happens, normally you either go drill sergeant, instructor, or recruiter, and they decided I should be an instructor. So they sent me back to Georgia, which is where I did my job training, to actually teach the satellite terminal that I was working on.
So after 4 years of active, what happened next?
I got out of the Army and worked for a little while full-time and went to school part-time. And then I stopped and went to Mount St. Mary's and got my degree in teaching.
Okay.
And I was teaching, I taught in Mother Seton School in Emmitsburg. I taught in Baltimore County, 4th grade. And then I taught at Ballinger Creek Middle School. Finally, I got hired in Frederick County and was teaching Spanish there.
And even after all of that, you couldn't stay away from the military, right?
Right. No, I was out 7 years getting my degree and all that, and decided to go into the National Guard. I was working with, actually met a guy through somebody I was working with in Emmitsburg, and talked to him, and I went to a communications unit that used to be up in Cascade. Okay. So, yeah, I missed it.
While you were in the National Guard, were you ever deployed?
Yes, 2004, 2005. I was working at Ballinger Creek Middle at the time, and I got word in the summer, in July, that I was going to be deployed in August. So I went to Iraq, actually, for, they call it OIF 3. It's Operation Iraqi Freedom 3.
Okay.
It was the third big group that was deployed to support the Iraq mission.
And you were there for a year?
Yes.
Wow.
I was a section sergeant for communications, had 6 different sites and about 35 people that were working in my section. I was a section sergeant. So it was very interesting.
That's amazing. Did you find yourself in danger or in dangerous territories when you were serving in Iraq?
Oh, yes. Not only just on the base I was staying on, there were times when the Iraqis would fire things onto the base, but also I went out a couple times to visit a couple of my sites that were not on the base, so I had to convoy out to them.
During your time in the military, where have you traveled?
Well, in the active Army, my first 4 years, I was in Georgia and Okinawa, and while I was in Okinawa, I traveled to Korea 5 times.
5 times?
5 times, and the Philippines once, and that was to play softball for the Navy.
Wow!
And then in the National Guard, I've been to Germany for an overseas mission. That was really interesting and fun. And then Kuwait and Iraq.
Okay, so you've been all over the world.
Yes.
Have any of those tours had any special meaning for you?
Yeah, one of my trips to Korea while I was in Okinawa, the chaplain from the Marine Corps on the base where I was working had a small group of people go out to one of the orphanages while we were in, it was Pohang, Korea. And we took food and candy and things like that, sodas, hot dogs, you know, typical American food, and had lunch with a bunch of kids at this orphanage and, you know, fed them. And then we took them outside their little compound there and bought them candy and toys and stuff like that and just played with them. It was really neat.
That is
so
neat.
it kind of got me, you know, kind of thinking about things.
Yeah, it sounds like it might have been a life-changing moment for you.
Definitely. It was interesting because since I was about 18, I had thought about adoption. And after that, of course, I had a soft spot for Korean. The little Korean kids are just so adorable. And I, you know, just kept thinking about it and brought us to like, what, 9/11. And when 9/11 happened, I really started thinking about things. And I was like, well, my Prince Charming hasn't come yet, so I may as well do this on my own. So I decided to adopt on my own. But looking into it, private adoption was out of my range.
It can be.
So I saw that DSS, foster care, had chances for adoption as well, which I did not know. So I took the classes for become a foster parent. In 2002, I was licensed as a foster parent.
Now, you and I talked a little bit about coincidences. Tell me a little bit about that story.
Well, I had been, so 2002 I got licensed, and then I was deployed. The year I came back, I had had no placements, although I had had calls about placements for foster children. And I had talked to my new social worker and told her, you know, when I got into this initially, I really wanted to adopt. So 5 days later, I get a phone call, and they start talking to me about a little infant boy that was 20 minutes old.
20 minutes?
20 minutes old.
Wow.
And she's telling me all this information about this baby, and I finally said, is this a long-term placement or a short-term placement? She says, oh, about 18 years. I said, you want me to adopt him? She says, that's the plan.
Oh, wow.
So my son, he was born the day after me. So that was one of the big coincidences. I was a Mother's Day present, so was he. So, and there were a lot of things that happened. It was just crazy, the whole story about how he came to, you know, end up with me.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And what's your son's name?
John Michael.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for serving your country.
Well, thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing your heart with us today on FCPS All Stars.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next week, and shine on.